250 million shares traded of Tesla in one day, and stock price was up, 40 or so dollars a share, but nothing like the $300 to $400 we had expected. So what happened, and what should we expect next? This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If it's your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Please note we did 2 notes today because a lot of people got mad at 1 note. We can do a whole concert for you because I actually played the guitar, but that's not the show. Today we want to thank our Patreon supporters as usual. Your support makes the channel viable and allows us to continue to do the show and grow and provide better service in the process. I also wanted to ask you to like and subscribe if you enjoy the show. Thank you. So this Friday was a very big disappointment to me. And I was actually impressed because some of you actually watched our entire show prior to Friday, where we covered a whole range of potential issues that could occur. So today's show is sort of got multiple titles. What I was calling it is something called It's a Family Affair. It's a family affair. If you want to actually hear the song, go over and check out Sly and the Family Stone. And they actually have a song called It's a Family Affair. And it's a great song. And it sounds a lot better when they sing it than when I sing it. So you might enjoy it a lot more. The reason I bring this up is that it sort of covers one of several issues that we wanted to review with you as to A, why did the stock do what it did, and B, what's next. So one of the things that the S&P indicated is that 17% of the shares from Tesla or any other company is focused on what's called dues-paying folks that work with the S&P in terms of the parameters of how they operate. So if you pay your dues, S&P supports you, but you also have very tight parameters within which you operate. That group of companies, if you will, is 17% of the S&P family. The remainder of the family, obviously, is a lot larger. So 30 to 50 billion is the whole family, but there are those who are maintaining S&P discipline, but they're not making any effort to pay all the fees and therefore being completely legit to the S&P. So we wanted to address this today because the first part of what happened, and the reason why I'm calling this is a family affair, is the fact that 50% of Tesla shares are owned by large institutions. One of the things we noted was that for some reason, there was a lot of confidence on the part of the market makers. They'd have no problem integrating Tesla into the S&P. Not only that, but not only would they have no problem getting Tesla into the S&P without any headaches, but they already knew most of the numbers related to getting, call it 200 million shares traded in under 5 minutes. And so the question that comes up is, how and why did they know that? And therefore, when they executed that, it worked exactly as they described. So the answer we're coming up with is, it's a family affair. What that means is that we had a conversation numerous times as we were entering this period about the fact that when you look at the large institutions that own the shares, there are a number of them that both own the shares before in other funds or bought them in other funds so they would have them ahead of their S&P entry. And when it came time to do the S&P entry, all they had to do was what's called block trades. So if you or I want to trade S&P or trade Tesla stock, you put a trade in theory, you might get your 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 shares all from one person, but that trade is likely to be broken up in different slices from different sellers, and it's all done automatically by computers now. Well, one of the problems, or one of the things that comes up, is a concept called block trading, where people who trade large blocks of shares typically don't want to go into necessarily the open market, because as they put large trades in, it will cause the price of the stock to spike. So so as you notice, the stock was up, but it didn't spike like crazy, and they moved a huge number of shares. So what we're arguing is that, in essence, you had block trading occur, and the agreed upon prices were set prior to us getting to that last 5 minutes when this was happening. And so what that basically meant was those guys had a deal on what they were going to buy on one side and sell on the other for, and they were good, and they were happy with it. So the question that comes up is, now wait a second, they're doing block trading, they're moving a huge percentage of the company's shares all at once, so on a supply and demand basis, prices should have spiked. Not so fast. One of the issues that we brought up was there's a problem with how all this might work and what that, in terms of the spike of the price. And the answer is, if you're at Fidelity and the S&P buyer for your group sits across the hall, he'll come by and say, hey, you have large cap growth, so you have the Tesla shares we need for our S&P fund. Can we buy them from you? He'll say, we can sell at market so we don't get busted, and but we do have the shares, and we'll have to report the trade on the markets, but we could simply send the shares over to you. They never leave the building. We don't have any trading fees. There are all these benefits that we get from block trading within the family, hence why I'm calling this, it's a family affair. So basically, what we had happen here is that a large percentage of the shares were simply block trades within house for a lot of the large firms. And they can justify it because they already had the shares elsewhere. They were doing it at market, so there's no illegality that might be associated with it that would allow people to sue. Plus, a lot of the people who own one fund likely own the other fund. So who's going to sue if you'd be taking money out of your own pocket anyway? So I believe that this is largely what occurred. Now, the answer to this, was this all of it? Because the stock price was indeed up. And the answer is, I don't believe this was all of it. And that's why I think that we still have a few days of stock price mellows out and there are other people. So one of my trading buddies asked the question, well, what about the fact that there are people who aren't paying the S&P fees, but they are adhering to the S&P parameters as part of the funds that they run? What are they doing about purchasing their shares? And the answer I had for them was the fact that the value of Tesla's stock rose 150 points prior, once it was announced and prior to their entry. A lot of the people buying during that period were these funds because they weren't under the time restrictions that the official S&P buyers were. So are they completely done buying in order to fill out their S&P complement? I don't think so. I think it's greater than 50%, more like 70 or 80%, but we still have 20% to go. And that could be anywhere from 20 to 50 or 60 million shares worth of buying. The challenge, though, is that we don't know what this exact number is. I think it still represents an upward push for the stock price, but given that we didn't get what we wanted, I believe that this is a like scenario. What we actually wanted to have happen, which did not occur, was kind of a squeeze on shares. If those large institutions had chosen to keep their Tesla shares and were forced into the open market to buy, be it block trades or regular trades, they would have been forced into a situation where they're buying shares from the outside market in large quantities where there are not that many shares available anyway. And under that scenario, that's where we get our 200, 300, 400 point rise in one day or even a few minutes, because you have, in essence, a bidding war for the shares, and therefore you have an acceleration in that value. So I wanted to sort of have you noodle on this and share with us any thoughts, questions, etc. regarding this. The next question is kind of, where do we go from here with the stock? Very legitimate question. The answer is that there's a lot of valuations out there, and most of them are between 650 and 700, with Goldman Sachs coming in that 775 range. The answer, I think, right now lurks between what current valuations are, which I think pushes it up into the 700s nicely, but not into the 8 or 900s. What I actually see happening right now is that we get some more of a push as the final buyers need to come in, but we don't get a dramatic uptake in price because we saw all those trades or shares move already. The next thing we sort of bounce back to is kind of how is Tesla's quarter going? What kind of numbers we're going to see at the end of the month? How do those numbers influence the stock as we're going forward? And so this is sort of the next phase of sort of what we're heading into. Just a quick reminder, please take time to like and subscribe if you enjoy the show. So the other note here that we wanted to put out is the fact that we've been sort of, for this show, I decided to show some video. That video includes, we took a look at the parking lot in the Atlanta store for Tesla. A lot of new vehicles being delivered, lots fairly full because they have to house repair vehicles, new vehicles, and even test drive vehicles as well on a fairly small area. And then even in service bays seem to be pretty small in terms of the footprint for that market. Very surprised how small it is given how big the number of people are in Atlanta, but Tesla doesn't seem dominant, but is doing okay in that market space. So our assessment is very disappointed. We didn't see more of a push on the stock price. Not surprised. I do believe that we now have 10% more of Tesla shares in the hands of more institutions based on the S&P entry, or that'll be completed in the first few business days of next week. So I do see an upward push on the stock, but not a dramatic one because of what I just described. The other thing is that as the fund managers go back to look at the stock, they now have to really work on, well, what do the fundamentals of companies look like in terms of its growth and profitability? And that will be the basis driving stock price way more so than when it enters the S&P. How is that short squeeze really going to work? So I think it's a bummer. I've been sort of thinking it through in terms of what happened. If there's a critical moment that sort of articulates this point, take a look at just 5 minutes before the close on Friday. Notice that there are some folks that were executing a pin as they usually do on Friday on Tesla. But on the other side, notice how the number of shares was spiking 50, 100 million quickly. And there was a very little movement, in fact, downward movement in the stock price as it did it. And what I really felt like as I watched that was that you had all these off-market transactions at market going. And so that trading wasn't affecting the mainline trading because all of that action was beyond the purview of the regular market, but still impacted by market numbers like pricing and reporting how those trades were going. So it was an amazing thing to watch all those shares moving, and you could see the numbers clicking, but no impact whatsoever almost on what the price was. With the notable exception of there's a 695 price that popped up briefly, but it sort of evidently was there, but nobody ever was able to trade at that number because it came across very quickly, and then the stock price fell back down, and we went from there. So we'll see how this turns out as we enter Monday trading, etc. So this ends our formal sort of discussion of Tesla and kind of what's going on. Next, I wanted to move over to our health tips that we usually do. As you may recall, it's been an interesting experience with this because we surveyed about 200 doctors to determine, based on their specialty, tips that you should consider. We always cover the same ones, but we also try to blend in new ones. I wanted to note that the University of Louisville's upper respiratory doc recommended do not eat within 2 hours of eating, preferably 4 hours, allowing the food to digest. The second recommendation was no more than once a week fried foods. Kidney doc from the Rockville, Maryland area. The third recommendation that we got was that we like to pub is whenever you eat food or anything else, it goes to your stomach, takes blood flow away. So if you're having other activities like lovemaking, all the blood flow to your stomach reduces your enjoyment of other activities. So you want to be mindful of this. He recommended having a salad or something small during this period for that reason. The third tip that I wanted to review is if you're living by yourself, I wanted to encourage you to go onto the Apple or Google store and get a monitor on your phone and monitor yourself once a month or so to determine if you might have sleep apnea. Because if you're having it, oftentimes you can't hear it, but those apps are free or very cheap and totally worth the effort to use one, because I actually worked at a sleep clinic at Stanford for a year, and sleep apnea is a big issue, and literally you could actually die from it. I actually dated somebody and I heard her snoring, and I pointed out that she had sleep apnea. She went and checked it and ended up having some operations and so forth designed to clear that problem. So it's something you definitely want to consider, especially if you live by yourself and you don't have a partner that can kind of screen you once in a while to make sure you don't have a problem going on in this space. Sleep apnea, look it up, very real problem, could be a big problem for you, especially if you're by yourself and you don't have someone that can sort of inform you what's going on or tape you so that you know what the doctors can listen to understand where you are. I guess the final one I wanted to make, note, 30 SPF or better, great idea. 5-2 or some other diet. About 60% of the doctors we surveyed are doing some kind of fasting, so that's highly recommended. The 25 leg lifts per leg recommended by Dinesh at the University of Michigan. I wanted to repeat this to you. He's actually specializes in gout, not the ortho issues that he recommended, but I thought it was a great idea nonetheless, which is why we always try to include it, and I do it every day and did it this morning. Also wanted to note from him that in terms of gout, you'll find that as you age, the types of foods you're eating, basically in the case of gout, it creates acid that sits next to your joints if you're eating the wrong foods. So you may find things like steak, too much shellfish, etc., where your body has sort of changed out how it's dealing with those things as you're aging. And these are things that you might want to consider. So we usually keep our show in a certain time frame. I feel a little embarrassed because I like the health tips and we're getting positive feedback. So we're doing a little bit more than we might in the past, explaining what they are and how they work. So we appreciate any and all feedback. And we want you to be healthy and enjoy life. So we want to thank you again for joining us. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss German, au revoir French, Lihitrot Hebrew, Choda Hafez Farsi, Zdravstvuyte, hello in Russian, Ni hao ma, hello in Chinese, Hey do Swedish, Zdravstvuyte we've said in Russian, Ni hao ma, hello in Chinese, Namaste Hindi, Mahalo Hawaiian, and I think we'll end today with our Brazilian brasileño, como vai, tudo bem, in Portuguese. Thanks once again for joining us. And in Jamaica we say, enough respect, walk good man. Have a great day. Bye for now, and thanks for joining us.